Good morning.
Good morning.
What would you like to talk about today?
Let's see. Over the years, we've gotten a lot of questions because we do the free webinars and we do the Q&As with the groups and the Facebook Lives. And one question that keeps coming up almost every single time is, what can I do to help my friends or family go through this transition with more ease, even though they don't have tools or they're really deep into 3D? How can I help them make it a little bit easier?
Yeah. So there's one answer, but it's too simple of an answer, and it will apply if you are masterful at managing your space and standing in front of the people and allowing them to be who they are. But most of us are not that manageable. So it gets challenging, particularly when you have times like right now, where you have this huge polarization and everybody's got an opinion about right and wrong, and you've got really hard, dug-in opinions about right and wrong. Whether they're right or wrong, it doesn't matter. It's my opinion and I know what I'm talking about. And then you try to deal with that. It's a complicated thing. So one of the places in regard to that polarized, dug-in opinion is, I find that if you can not argue with it, just allow it. Just really simply, because you're not going to win the argument, and all you're going to do is get frustrated and with that person with real rigid point of view. So one of the things that you can do is come up with some very specific answers or comments when you get confronted with, well, why don't you believe like I believe? For example, you change this subject slightly to, well, tell me a little bit more about that. Now, it's not necessary, and be curious. Maybe they have something interesting to say, but tell me a little bit more about that. Just took it off of you having to defend yourself to them simply doing what they really want to do, which is talk about their belief system that much more.
Up.
So tell me a little bit more about that. Ask a second question. Okay, well, where does that go in terms of some kind of a solution? In both questions, you're not either challenging or pushing against. You're simply giving them some room. And then you no longer are the target of why are you so stupid, and what's wrong with you? And simply come to a place that kind of the third thing you say is, that's really interesting. I'll think about that a little bit more. You didn't get into a fight. You didn't get into having to have an opinion, and you can actually walk away. So the key to that is there's three statements to play with for yourself. There's others too. But in that polarized situation, how do you get out of that? The family members are really this and you're that. So the other thing is, pay attention to where people are in pain, and when you have a chance to assist. But another part of it is in that kind of religious context of don't cast your pearls before swine. That statement really means once you start engaging with fixing, healing, trying to convince them of something else, chances are you're going to get your head bit off, or they're going to condemn you, or they're going to then deny you. What if you have a relationship with a boss and all of a sudden you find yourself accidentally moved way over here and now you have to agree with me? Having a set of questions back that allows you to kind of step away, as I said in the first place, but the key is, it's not your fight, but if you can be of help to somebody, help. But where you're not going to win the battle, or you're probably going to lose the war, figure out a way of just simply saying, oh, that's interesting, I'll think about that. Or You know, now that's not a pure answer to everything.
My answer to that question, if someone emails or asks me directly, is if they say, "How can I help my family and friends?" and my first response is, "You can't."
Yeah.
Because a lot of times they are not asking. They're in their own bubble, all wound up, trying, proselytizing, and anybody who doesn't believe what I believe is going to hell. And so they're wound up in this painful vortex. And to insert yourself and try to make them
Better.
think differently, it's you're not going to be able to do that. So you don't try to change people. And you said something too that is what I do. Is I say to folks, allow them to simply be where they are. There's a lot going on in the world. People are really in a lot of pain right now. There's confusion, there's transition, huge shift. Just allow them to be where they are and recognize that pain speaks really loudly sometimes.
Yeah. So really be clear too, this is not, what you just said is not about I don't care.
No.
There's in fact quite the opposite. So many of you are healers, and many of you are out of control healers. You know what I mean by that is like you want to fix the world and fix everything. But there's a state of balance in this, and there's a state of maturity in this, and there's a state of observing and pausing until you can actually influence something in a manner that allows them to get better. Take it down a notch or move it over a notch, and you start looking at situations where people are sick. Let's go to that physical side, or mentally disturbed. They're depressed all the time, or they're really upset about life, or they literally lost their job, or somebody in the family just died and that person's really distraught. Fixing them is something that they're not asking, as Roxanne just said, to be fixed. And a lot of times the task is to, what do they need? And many times all they need is to simply have somebody sitting there listening. But in each of our spaces, it's really, can you be in that state of present time, observing, and then choosing an action that relates to where they are. And this word allowing them to be where they are. A lot of times people are in really bad places by their own doings, and they simply will not let go of, he did this and I'm never going to let him go. Really pretty third dimension, always and never, rigid constructs. You're not going to fix that. And so when you start saying, well, what if you gave them a little bit more respect, but you're going to get your head bit off. Yeah. So one of the most challenging parts of this is doing nothing. Being available. How can I help you? Let me know. I'm available for you if you want something. Ask if you want something, but I'm going to simply be here, but I'm not going to try to fix you.
Yeah. And be there and available, but don't match them. Don't buy into their game. Not game as negative, but
yeah.
They're in a vortex. Don't step into their vortex. Just hold your space and like Project Park Bench, create a light that's so bright, an attitude, a countenance that's so bright that when you're around these people, they notice and they go, wow, I want some of that.
Yeah. There's another piece of this too. We talk about this in Mastering Alchemy, but there are a lot of people who are victims in the game that they're playing, and recognize, as much as this will sound outrageous, particularly if you're the victim, victim is a choice. It's not an accident that happens to you. Somebody else is doing it. There's reality. Somebody else is in the process of doing it to you. But the ability to step out of that I'm the victim space into a place of authority or choice or action is very different than poor me, I'm the victim, they're doing it to me. So when you start to recognize that there's a game, and we touch on it a lot in level 2, is victim, rescuer, persecutor is a game. All three pieces are part of the game. You can't get rid of the victim without dealing with the rescuer, persecutor. So in that space, as you begin to recognize, how am I playing this game with these people? Quite often, your ability to step out of the game yourself gives them the room to step up and change themselves, because it takes two people to play a game, and kind of when you take your ball and go home, they don't have any room to play. But what you do is you can begin to change the configuration of into well-being, into opportunity, into certainty, clarity, focus, kind of vibrations like that. They change. They simply begin to adapt to where you are. So some of you may hear that as hard, or like, well, they don't really care. Absolutely to the contrary. The only way of getting out of the muck of the game that is, but this is my life and they don't understand, is to get out of the muck. And that is an action that's required. And if you always do what you've always done, guaranteed you always get what you always got. So how do you choose?
Here's a trick too that some people have told me about. So if there's a piece of, if there's a brochure or a, something that you find inspiring and you'd like this other person to read, but you can't tell them, oh, you should read this.
You should, yeah.
You just leave it out on the counter. You just leave it out on the coffee table with no charge. No, you've got to read this. Nothing like that. Just happen to leave it out and see what happens.
Yeah. And another piece of that, a lot of times without getting into the, well, you think you know everything kind of response from somebody when you're trying to help them, is I've found talking to people is, yeah, I know somebody that did this the other day.
Right.
And it was really, they had this great experience where they did X, Y, Z, and they got hired at this company. It was really kind of interesting listening to their conversation. Lay it on the table, walk away. You're not telling them, you're not directing, you should, but it's really a great way of being of real valuable assistance by talking about somebody else's success. Not so much that they begin to say, well, I can never do that, or they see what you're doing, but just simply say, yeah, my friend just had this experience. It was really quite remarkable. Short, lay it on the table, walk away.
And be neutral. Don't be attached to them reading it or doing it.
Yeah. I mean,
no attachment.
We've had, I remember you telling this woman something through stories 10 different times, and finally she got it and said, well, gee, I wish somebody had told me this before, you know, and it's like you burst out laughing inside.
I've been trying for months.
And then you just, great, that's
Yep.
good that you've succeeded. I'm happy for you.
Yeah.
So helping often is not helping unless you're able to kind of observe and then create an opportunity and allow them to choose it or not. So,
Good one.
okay. Go off and have a nice morning.